computer. Yeah. So good evening, everyone. My name is Teniola Tayo with the Abuja Literary Society. This is the Abuja Literary Society Book Jam. It happens every Friday. We've just met each other. Welcome, everybody. Today we have a very exciting author joining us. His name is TJ Benson. I call him TJ Benson in full, so I never say TJ. So maybe TJ Benson, you tell me if that has been annoying to you so far, the fact that I always say TJ Benson in full. So TJ Benson is a writer and he has published a couple of books. But then today we're going to be talking about him as a writer, but also about his latest book or his most recent book, which is People Live Here. But even though we're talking about his most recent book, I think it will still be an opportunity to talk a little bit about the book before this one, because I know we had him on the book jam maybe a couple of years ago to talk about his first book, but then he's very prolific, so he's done a lot more writing since then. So it'd be good to catch up with TJ Benson as a creative and as a writer. So TJ Benson is a member of the Abuja Literary Society community, and like I was saying earlier, he's one of the people that I use to brag when I'm talking about ALS. You know, these are some people that have, not just because of ALS, but then also through ALS and through everything else, they're really growing in their arts, really achieving lots of things, and really just making lots of gains and moving the needle forward as far as the Nigerian literature goes. So TJ Benson, you're welcome. I would love to it would be great if you introduce yourself. I already introduced you somewhat, but then you could introduce yourself again, because I know that when people introduce themselves, they focus on the things that they think are more interesting. It's just always a different vibe. So TJ Benson, are you there?
Yes, I am. I'm here.
All right. So you can just introduce yourself.
First of all, I feel very what word do I use now? Discriminated, because I was not allowed to share what my
Oh my
favorite
God,
thing
I'm so
in the
sorry.
book
No.
was.
Okay.
And now, no, and now you switched on the record, and the rule is I can't say what I want to say while the
But you know
recording is
what? I
on.
can pause the recording, because I can see up here that I can pause it actually. No. In fact, I'm pausing it now. Let me pause. So TJ Benson, now the official introduction for our guests, before our participants. Let's get to know you, TJ Benson, the writer, and the different hats that you wear.
I mean, I'm a storyteller, and I am a visual artist. I work in images, drawings, and photography. And I also teach creative writing. Yeah. So I'm just a storyteller and a visual artist, basically.
So you are someone that expresses yourself artistically via many different mediums. So you write stories, that's one thing, but you also do
Really.
story. Do you write poems? Not really.
Yes, I make jewelry.
You make
Yeah.
jewelry. You take
Yeah,
photos.
but I combine the jewelry. I combine the jewelry with my drawing because my jewelry comes from the drawings I do. So I take certain aspects of my drawings and I craft pieces, and my metalsmith here in Kaduna we make something out of it. So, yeah, I often classify the jewelry and under my sculpture, under my visual art. So
Hmm.
yeah.
So stories, jewelry, photography, visual arts in terms of paintings, poetry. So many different, I get the sense that you're someone that has a lot inside you that's just coming out, in many different ways.
Or I don't have a government job. It could be that. So.
They say
If
that
I have a
because of the
government job,
government
I
job, you have
definitely
more time.
for sure. To be very honest, when people ask how I'm very prolific, the fact that I don't have a civil servant job definitely helps. So yeah, I'm not even joking.
Well, I'm glad that the Nigerian government is of service. to you in that way. To you in that way. Well, we had you on the book jam in January or February. So where we were talking about writing and setting writing goals, which was quite interesting.
Oh, I was teaching. It was a workshop. No,
Yeah, it was
I
a
was in a
workshop
workshop with
with
yeah, with
Farida.
Aisha,
Exactly.
with
Yes.
Farida. Sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but I know that we got to hear a bit about your writing journey then. But if you could just, tell us again when you started. So do you remember
Okay.
the first thing that you wrote and what the what inspired it, what the feedback was? Um yeah, just how you started and maybe just a little bit of a line from then to now.
Mm. Okay. I mean, the first piece I ever wrote was the version of Snow White because I was nagging my dad that I didn't believe the version of Snow White waiting for someone to come and kiss her. It was just weird for me, like the whole necrophilia thing. So my dad got tired of me disturbing him because he was a sculptor painter. He just gave me a jotter and a red pen to write my own version. And I started writing ever since. But the first thing I ever completed, I think, was a novella that I had used exercise books to teach. I used Nidra and Thread to teach several exercises together. And I wrote a novella which had alien invasion,
Mm,
but because I was reading lots of R.L. Stein at the time, and yeah, and I showed my auntie during this thing there, and she was like, "You have to keep this. Don't throw it away." Like I just literally casually to just show her, but the way she urged me to take it seriously, it made me. I think that was the first feedback that I got when I was in JFS 1, yes, of my writing. And it
mm,
made me start holding, taking writing a bit seriously.
mm, mm. So, um,
Okay, and a clear path from that to the
well,
present,
actually have a
right?
question at this point. First of all, so the Snow White saga, do you still have it? Yeah,
I know it
you
was on a
don't.
journal.
Okay, so you don't have it
No, it
anymore
was like in a journal somewhere. No, I've lived in different homes
in different
since
place.
then. Like I've
Yeah.
lived in different, yeah.
So I think the first thing that I wrote was a story about an orphan girl. But one thing I remember about that story was that I used the term wheelers. Does that mean anything to you? So a wheelers, WEELASS.
That's yeah. I was in Scotland in February, so yes, I know what you mean. That's like this small boy,
Small
right?
girl, yeah, yeah.
Last girl is yeah, girl is
Oh,
last, yeah,
I think girl is
last.
maybe lastly, but something like that, Sha. So, but imagine as maybe a
Yeah, yeah.
10-year-old, this was what I was writing, right? Because it just showed that my influences were very foreign.
Mm.
Because imagine, imagine calling somebody a wheelers in a Nigerian story. But it's good to hear about this. I wish you had the Snow White thing. It'd be very interesting. I mean, it sounds like something that would be, in fact, really how do you call it? It would be really modern or really contemporary, especially with this current wave of feminism and this renewed push for female agency. I don't think a lot of people have thought about that fact that Snow White was just supposed to
Mm.
lie down. And I think for a lot of the Disney princesses, I think some people have spoken about it really that they were just supposed to be in place and wait for someone to come save them. Which I mean is definitely the message that we're trying to pass across to women today. But now we can go back to your journey, your creative journey, right? And just how I mean from there, what happened next? Was it in high school and university that you started to write a bit more? Was it and then from there, to the first book that was published, a collection of short stories that was published. Yeah, so let's hear a bit of that.
Yeah, a good question that you asked the first time, which you forgot, was about what connection of my, what connections they are from my early writings now. Is that everything I do now is still set in this speculative or fantastical universe.
Mm.
Even though I didn't write alien invasions anymore, whatever, but my novel has my books will often have something having to do with magic or the supernatural or superstition in everyday life. And when I was in secondary school, I was reading a lot to escape my life. Then I was changing schools, I was thinking with different families, and a book was the constant thing, was the one constant I had. And when I finished reading the books in my library, I had to start creating stories for myself to hide in. And so I started writing more seriously. And I mean, what in uni, I wrote for some magazines. I wrote some articles on relationships. I wrote up to 30 something articles on relationships, even though I hadn't been in one. And I don't even know what I was writing. I really hope they've taken those essays down. But yeah, I did the book that just got published. I wrote it in my year of industrial attachment. Um, that was my fourth year, and I wrote it in 6 months. But the first book that I got published was a collection of short stories that was nominated for the Saraba Manuscript Prize, and that got some attention to it, and Parisha Publishers picked it up, and that became my first published in 2018.
So you mentioned the first book, and I mean, I have the first book. I think I have a copy of it somewhere here actually. And when I mean, for anyone that has read it, I'm glad that you talk about speculative fiction and the fact that a lot of your work is embedded in those worlds. I'm sure you've gotten this question a lot, but where were you getting the ideas for these stories? Because really, like they were definitely not run of the mill. They're definitely not things that you see every day on the streets. So where were you getting the ideas for the
Mm.
stories?
For me, I always thought I would get ideas from movies or from, but once I started writing, I realized that what interested me was more about our cultures here in Africa and the ways these cultures could, be projected into the future. Um, so you have the culture of like my father's tribe, moving around with one of their ancestors' head in a pot that had been planted into a flower because he died. The elder died when they were migrating from Congo to Nigeria, and I was able to, use this kind of plot device in a futuristic story, this kind of element in a futuristic story, where they also plant people as trees for land conservation instead of these big burial pits. And in terms of, I get a lot of my plot ideas come from dreams, especially the more fantastical ones. I try to journal my nightmares and dreams and remember things exactly as they were. I try to tap into my subconscious, and that helped me come up with very original and interesting stories. So if a dream can, shock me or interest me or scare me, they might, affect you, the reader, as well.
Hmm. Dreams. I mean, I don't know. I really don't know because there's a link, but the thing is that there's also a link between having a creative brain and having very fantastical dreams, I think, because I feel like years ago I used to have crazy dreams, right? Like fully formed with many different layers, lots of things happening, but now not really. I mean, I can't even always remember what I dreamt about, or perhaps it's nothing, right? Nothing interesting. So I've always felt like the fact that I was reading a lot more novels or fiction or things like that before contributed to having very creative dreams, or the fact that my brain was a little bit more creative before contributed to me having dreams that were very interesting, that would even be worth writing down or mining for ideas. But now that my brain is just in one direction, just policy, organizing, coordinating this one, that one, that one. I'm not sure. It's like my brain is not working very well anymore. But it's always a privilege to have access to that, because dreams are fantastic, right? And I think dreams help you imagine things that may not even seem possible, but then it happens in a dream, and then the dream made it possible, and then you feel like you can also make it possible through your writing. So that's fantastic. That's good to know. Now to
I
talk
want
about,
to say though,
okay.
sorry, I just add though, like also it's not always a good thing. I mean, it could also be response to trauma. Your life was probably more stressful back then. I've been studying dreams in psychology, and apparently dreams are a way for us to resolve issues in our daily lives. So if your brain, if you're stuck in a physical, if you have an issue in the daytime, your dream is where your subconscious tries to resolve it by throwing up scenarios, throwing up,
Yeah.
what you suspect about certain people, or all of that. So it's not always this kind of, I mean, it's definitely a kind of imagination sometimes, but it's also how our brains deal with trauma. So it could be that your life is simpler now, which is why you don't dream as much. I haven't used a plot idea from a dream in years now. So.
I don't even know what to say to that. But yes, I know what you mean. I about dreams and the different functions, that is like your brain sorting through lots of data, trying to analyze, sort. I don't know if I don't know if I can say that my life is simpler now. I don't know. I just feel like maybe it's a little bit less imaginative, right? And I need to make it more imaginative. But yeah, I was gonna now come to your new book. So, your new book, but then you said you wrote it during your industrial attachment. So, what year was that?
2013.
2013. Because this new book, it was a question I had, because the context, the background is that it's happening post all subsidy removal in Nigeria. So, but this,
Yeah, 2012.
yeah, 2012. And that was quite interesting to me, because I was wondering, okay, did you go back and write a retrospective book, or, how was that? So you actually wrote it in 2013, when it seemed like the
Yeah.
subsidies were going to go. Okay. So how did you come up with that idea
Yeah, when it seemed like that was the worst thing that we could do.
that will happen in Nigeria? How did
Yeah,
you,
that happened in Nigeria.
yeah, how did you come up? How did you, what, like, take us through your positionality, as far as that's, positionality is a very unnecessary word. Maybe, but what I just mean is like, it's like an amebo kind of word, or like a obasabi kind of word, but then where were you standing as far as the all subsidy um went, or as far as it was developing at that time? You were a student, you were just coming out of university. How were you relating to it? Because at that time you were not really sort of like fully maybe in the workforce.
An
You
adult.
started paying rent
Okay.
like that. I don't know what you were doing then, like, this, maybe buying curtains, buying mattress, and, and some of those things with your own money. So how did you relate with the developments around the all subsidy? Because I think that's story, it's a lot about empathy, isn't it? So it's about really connecting to something and then relating to it. So how would you say that happened?
I I think 2012, 2013 was the first time I came into awareness of myself as like as a Nigerian. Because I think that was the first time I sat and decided, okay, um, what does it mean to be a young person and be Nigerian? Because I have seen the Occupy Nigeria protest in Lagos. I had seen, and of course, I was in school, and I could see we were, dancing around with ASU strike. There was a 7 month long strike that happened, and as a direct response to that strike, Bet Niger shops and like gambling shops sprung out. I don't think it, I'm not sure people have taken note of how much um, I think Nyesom Wike was the Minister of Education there or something like that. And I was just thinking about him. I remember vividly seeing his birthday celebration. It used to pass, and we were getting to like 6 or 7 months of strike, and then there was this surge of crime, and then homes were oversaturated. I was living in Abuja at the time because families were used to having, one family member, so at least two kids in school. So they have the small housing units, in the suburbs were enough to catch. And I wanted to sort of write about what it was like to be alive and young in that time. And then suddenly I ended up writing about the educational strike, but it's no longer 5 naira. Pure water is no longer 5 naira. They'll tell you all subsidy. Anything you say, all subsidy. And my the political courses I was living in, they learned, some of them were just learning English, but they're just learning to speak. And the first word that they speak was subsidy. Like, no, it was a very, very interesting time. Many people, subsidy became a very prominent word in English language, in Nigerian English language, subsidy removal, subsidy. So it just made me happy. I'd done other writing by then, but everything sort of made me focus on the time that we're living in.
This is very interesting to me because just on Monday, I published an article on the subsidy, but coming from a policy perspective, because all of us policy people say that that subsidy has to go, like yesterday, has to go ASAP now, because we just can't afford it anymore. So so I find this fascinating because it's sort of like looking at it from a different perspective. In 2012, I must have been in Ghana because I went to university in Ghana. So I'm hearing like you describing this is very new to me because I have no idea how things were like at that time. I mean, I heard about the protest, but this is sort of like having a different view on it, and I'm actually looking forward to exploring that further. But let me ask my next question. So, and also to the audience, don't forget, please, you guys always do this thing to me where you leave me to ask all the questions. Because as you can see, I'm a very gentle person, right? I'm an introvert. ALS is teaching me how to become an extrovert, or at least not always being an introvert. But if you have any questions, you can raise your hand. Even in the middle of our conversation, you can raise your hand. I can call on you, or you can also type questions in the chat. I can see a message from John about the audio. Yeah, there's a bit of an echo, but I think we're able to manage, by listening closely. So yeah, my next question was gonna be about your is protagonist. Is that the right words? The main
I
person.
think so.
Yeah, and there's protagonist, there's antagonist. So they didn't let me do literature in high school, so I don't know the terms very well. So how did you choose your protagonist? Why did you choose your protagonist, and how did your protagonist come to you? Um, so at the last book jam, we're talking about how characters come to writers, and I was mentioning how for this book, one of my favorite books, The Unbearable Lightness of Being by Milan
Hmm.
Kundera, he says that the entire idea of the book came to him because he had an image in his mind of a man standing by a window. So just from that image he had in his mind of a man standing by a window and thinking something, he shaped an entire book. So for your protagonist, how did did the character come to you? And did you have any challenges writing from the perspective of that character? Because that is not you. I mean, arguably, I mean, it could be you in other ways. Then on the surface, it's not you because it's a woman, isn't it? So yeah, tell us a bit about that.
I don't have any, story as interesting as Nakudera. It's definitely as romantic, but at the time I was pursuing self-annihilation. Like I was trying to experience the death to self that Christians talk about. And I was looking for a way to be distant from the story as much as possible. So who was as opposite to me as possible, and that was a young Nigerian woman who was, light skinned and who had an unwanted child. These were the things, and who was a nurse. You know, I tried to stretch myself as far away from my reality as possible. And it was like an exercise for me to see how if I could sustain that, that character and become a woman really as much as I could. Adopt a woman's mannerisms, how she adjusts her braid. Why do women who travel a lot prefer braids? You know, what kind of clothes are they more comfortable with? How do you navigate spaces? How do you navigate traveling alone as a woman? And this said it got me to know more. I got to learn more about women even though I grew up with them because I was writing from a very personal space. So for me, it was just an exercise in self-annihilation. I wanted to become something that I wasn't for a while. And that kind of had a very devastating effect on me at the time because when I was done writing, I kind of lost my mind. I didn't know who I was or how to be myself. I remember I closed from work that day and I got on the bus and they from Sky Memorial and I okay. Am I audible?
Yeah, audible, but there's a bit of an echo. So, but I think we can manage, Abby. I can hear you. I guess I don't know how it's sounding on mobile. Do you have earphones
Okay.
with you? If you don't have earphones, then we can just continue. I think it's
Oh, I have earphones, but I'm on the earphones now.
oh, okay. Maybe we should try without the earphones. Is it possible?
Okay. Yeah, for sure. Just I feel like the call is going to end, but I'll join back.
Okay, let's try. Okay, so TJ Benson said he's okay. I don't think I even caught that properly. So he's had to disconnect so that he can try without the earphone. So we see if the audio issue gets better. So we can, so you guys have a better experience. We'll just try. I mean, it's a reality of online meetings, right? But while he's joining back, you guys, please, don't forget to ask your questions. I'm already seeing some people here that I'm going to harass harass for questions. Are you back?
Yeah, I am. Is this better?
Yeah, I think it's better. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, no, it was just an exercise in, trying to be as opposite from myself as possible. And yeah, no, there was no magical thing about it.
So, I mean, there are a couple of things to unpack there. The first thing I wanted to say was that I follow you on Twitter, right? And I see some of the things that you post on Twitter, don't worry. And I've noticed that, I mean, a lot of men claim to be allies with women, right? So, I mean, a lot of people say, oh, a lot of men say they're feminist. But then I've just from observing on the periphery, some of the things that you've said, I feel like in your case, it seems a little bit more genuine. So like you definitely, if it feels like let me give an example. Sometimes I do this exercise with men where I say, okay, if a genie comes down and says tomorrow, all men are gonna have equal status with women, Are you going to be happy with that? And many of them say no, because even if they talk a big game about some things, they're still aware about the privileges that they have in society, and they're not really quite willing to give them up. But then I get this vibe that you're someone that is going to say, yes, why not? Am I right or am I wrong?
I mean, first of all, on Twitter, my Twitter is basically my brain, like my thoughts arguing with themselves. So I don't recommend anybody to follow me on Twitter, first of all. And as for being a feminist, it's so difficult to even call myself a feminist, because I can say I'm supporting women's rights, etc. But at some point, like with the recent proceedings in the US, I can be like, oh, this is too much for me. I'm checking out. I'm going to, focus. I'll play a video game or something. But a woman, someone who has a vagina can't take a break because, like, she has to be on the clock advocating for herself. So the fact that I can take a break from activism makes me wonder if I can call myself a feminist. But in terms of, I don't know how, having equal women. I'm not even just talking now. It's not even just I'm sure you'll be imagining the difficult parts, like the labor pains. For me, it's the joy too, it's sisterhood too. The way women, I would also want to, be able to be friends with, men the way women are able to be friends with women. So I know you're looking at it, oh, are you ready to take this cross? But I'm also ready for if you just equal right.
Enjoyment.
So.
Yeah. No, so the first thing you said, right, when you said the thing about the abortion rights and everything, even that's self-awareness is not very common. So now the reason I asked this question is because I'm wondering if there is a link between this, your current self, and the fact that you had to write this book from a particular perspective. What do you think? Do you think that you had this level of self-awareness even before writing the book from that character's perspective? Or would you say that having to embody that character for the 6-month period that you wrote that book, sort of changed your worldview on many different things? So now, and I always give this example that when you're right-handed, you don't realize that the world is built for right-handed people. You don't realize that the door handles are best placed for right-handed people. But then if you have to step into the shoes of a left-handed person for a week, then you now see how everything is sort of like not built for them. So you had to become this woman for 6 months. You had to figure out how she would respond to particular situations. You had to figure out how some things would affect her. And do you think that that sort of stayed with you, where now even when things happen, you're not just only seeing it from one perspective, you're seeing it from a more diverse point of view?
For me, even in the women that I write, I'm always, I always have this very low self-esteem when it comes to writing, portraying female characters, because I'm like, am I doing this right? But the women I write back to the women I knew growing up, and as a child, I didn't grow up with like weak women. I didn't know that women were supposed to be the weaker ones, because of the kind of people. But now that I'm older, I realized that my parents were living in this tiny bubble in a cosmopolitan city, which was Abuja at the time. And I got to see why their friends were mostly expats, etc. But no shade. But yeah, I didn't know that women were supposed to be the weaker sex or whatever until my parents died, and then I got exposed to other families and the more traditional African families. That was when I was like, oh, okay, this is what's happening. So really, in my imagination, and it's a challenge actually, maybe I'll try to write a weak woman. It for me, it was just things that were obvious. I had, I spent some time in my village, and I had seen what happened to women whose children, women who have, in quotes, unwanted pregnancies, and I wanted to sit with that because those issues were often pushed aside. But I was like, let's wake this up, and yeah, for me, I mean, it did make me more intimate with the physicality of woman. Very recent was my whatever. I was just writing from what I knew and the way the women in my family were. So, in fact, in an increasingly, the more I discover about the world, the more my imagination tries to hold on to the kind of person my mother was, or the kind of person my aunties are, and all of that.
Yeah, I mean, I see that too. So that's interesting. Do you have the book with you?
At the moment, no.
Okay.
I don't.
Okay. So or maybe before I ask my next question, let me pick Sheon's question. So Sheon has a question for you here. He's asking some of the more practical the more practical issues about editing. So what was the editorial process like? Yeah, I mean, going back to a story that you wrote in 2013, I think you said, and yeah, what was that like?
I wrote that book 6 times, like rewriting in different perspectives, different rituals. Like, it was hell. There were some publishers that would show interest and change their mind, show interest and change their mind, show interest and change their mind, show interest and ignore me for a year, 2 years, ask me. So, I was very young. So each time they change their mind, I'll think it's something in the book and then I'll start altering. So I changed the perspectives from first person to third person to second person plural. I kept on, going back and forth with the manuscript. What should I leave out? Although the ending, everything was, clear, but I kept on dancing around but at some point in 2018, I just decided to abandon the manuscript. I told myself that, every writer has, or almost every writer has a manuscript that they never get to publish. So maybe this will be mine. But in 2020, I had finished the editorial process for the Madhouse with my South African publisher, and I had taught several writing workshops as of then, and I suddenly had this confidence and audacity to return back to this 2013 novel with older eyes, and I cut it down from 97,000 words to 65,000 words. So, and it felt like I felt like I had superpowers when I was done with the manuscript, especially looking at what it was before. So yeah, that was the editorial process. Just hell, 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 hell. Sorry, I don't have any happy story about that.
But now it's out.
Yeah.
That is that's fantastic. There was a question that was coming to my mind now. Yeah, so because I think some people here may not know the book very well, right? So I think it would be nice if, in your own words as a writer, if you could tell us the story. I mean, most people have seen the blurb, because we shared that as part of the communications for this session. But in your own words, which is a very different thing, because the blurb is more like from the editor and the publisher. But in your own words, what is the story? What is like? Tell us what you wrote.
The story is about people who are on the fringes of the society, people who are not regarded as part of the society, whether it's single mothers or unwanted tribes, So who does the society decide belongs to us, or who does the society decide to keep out? And it's also a kind of removing the log from your eye before, plucking the whatever out of somebody's eye as it happens in humanitarian work, because it begins with the character going to Yemen in the uprising, but being redirected by her boss to come back to Nigeria because of the chaos that we also have here. So going to see what was happening outside sort of made her see we are inside hell, so we are not conscious of it until you go outside, and then you can now come back and now reappraise where you are. So it's a novel about people who are on the fringes of the society and how they belong.
So there's something that I just said now about removing the log in your eye. Some years ago, I went to a documentary screening, the one that did in Abuja, I think IICD, and it was about maybe the war in Syria, and I can't remember. I think it was a particular refugee camp that they were showing, and just how bad the living conditions there were. So everyone in that audience, everyone was shocked, and everyone was feeling really sad and bad about everything that they were seeing. But then I think someone now made the point that every single thing that they were seeing on that screen, even worse, was happening in our backyard, here in Nigeria, but we don't have eyes on it, so we don't see it. And because we don't see it, we don't think about it. And because we don't think about it, we don't worry about it, or sometimes even try to contribute what we can. I mean, there's not much that sometimes an individual can do, but at least, I mean, it was literally that watching a documentary on a situation somewhere else was making people feel more empathy towards a particular population than they were even feeling towards their own population. You should feel empathy for everybody, but then it was sort of like a liberty that was not even extended to our own fellow Nigerians that are going through even worse conditions. So I completely hear you when you say that.
Yeah, I mean, it's also a matter of see finish. Like, even if you were to uphold these mirrors in front of, even if you were to show fellow Nigerians what is happening in Nigeria, there's this measure of the shock, or basically see finish is no longer there. Yeah. But if you were to see a child, or if you were to see somebody else suffering somewhere else, you'll be able to lament and cry and whatever. But like if you in your own backyard, it's difficult because the person is probably the same skin as you or whatever. So yeah, there's also a measure of see finish to that.
In psychology, they call it I can't remember the term now, but this idea that when there is a particular stimulus or stimuli in your environment, and if it stays there, you adapt to it in a way that means that you're no longer reacting to it. It's sort of like a self-preservation kind of thing, because if you're always in an adrenaline state in response to that stimulus, then it's not healthy. So you sort of adapt to it. So if there's a rat here and you make a loud noise, let's say the rat is chained, right? The rat will jump and jump and jump, and then after some time it would ignore the noise because the brain cannot afford to keep on responding to that threat in the same way, because it can't stay in that state. So I completely understand that we've adjusted to some things, even just sometimes for mental health issues, the amount of people that are dying every day. But thank you for that. The other question I wanted to ask, so I think Faith said she missed your answer to Sharon's question. I guess if I was going to summarize it, I'll say that TJ Benson just told us that it was a very long process. So he wrote the book, and then in trying to negotiate with different editors or different publishers, he rewrote the book 6 times. So 6 different times he rewrote the book from maybe from different perspectives. And then at some point after a program, he was able to cut down the book. I think he cut about 20,000 words from around 20,000 words from the book to make it, very concise. And that was, and that's led to the publishing success, or to the publishing process. So Faith, I hope that was helpful for you. Yeah, and you guys, if you have any questions, please type them in the chat for TJ Benson about himself, about his writing, about his book. Now, on this book, People Live Here, where did you get that title? Or how did you get the idea for the title?
I have a question for you.
For me?
Tying to the previous question, because you had mentioned this psychological effect that being in space. And I'm curious as to how this influences your policy work or policy writing. How easy is it to shock people or lawmakers into making making, when I'm sure a lot of the work you do is work that has been beaten over for years. I'm sure you didn't invent any new policies in the work you do. So what measures do you, what extremes, if you have to go to extremes, do you go to be able to get the attention of lawmakers?
So policymakers, for many policymakers, like you said, it's even worse because as Nigerians, we protect ourselves from some of these things because of our mental health. But for them, it's because they're used to being criticized so much, so they now even become defensive, right? So rather than even just maybe becoming desensitized to a particular issue, they become defensive towards it. So if you want to start from, you're trying to talk to maybe the police about kidnapping, and you want to start by saying, which is something that I'm doing at the moment, you want to start by talking about their failures, then you've lost them because they're just going to start defending themselves that, oh, they did this and they did that. And in fact, they did this and they did that. And you've lost them completely. But for most policymakers, you just have to find some sort of alignment between the problem and something that they're interested in. So, and usually what they're interested in is usually linked to politics one way or the other. So you just need to find something like a way to tie it together that's okay. This has been a problem, we know that you've been working on it. But then if you do it this way and that way and that way, it may lead to this, and this may now help you with getting reelected or with getting this or with getting that. So we try not to deceive ourselves about the incentives that politicians respond to, because they're not out for the better good for majority of them, that they don't care about that because they've become completely desensitized to that. But when you try to find something that they're interested in, and then you tell them that, yeah, you can do this, but then you're also going to get this thing that you're interested in, then you're more likely to make some headway with them. So that's a quick a quick dip into policy making. But did I ask a question already before you asked me this question?
You were asking me about people live here. You asked if I forgot the question.
Yeah,
the
title. Yeah, I said, where did you get how did you? Yeah.
There was at first it was The Color of Silence, which is you, but how did I find it was from it when I was revising revising the book. There's a point in the book where my lead character says, she's advocating for this, in quotes, unwanted tribe. And, she's advocating for the land, and she's like, these people actually live here. Like, it's not just. And I was like, okay, maybe this is the title of the book. Like, it was just the sentence when I was revising. That was where the title of the book came from.
People live here. I like to when what?
When you get to that part of the book, you would know.
I would know. Yeah. I like to know. So you guys in the audience, you can type in the chat to tell us what you think about the title. I mean, good things. But for me, when I saw that title, it was immediately evocative. People live here. And it reminds me of something I've been saying about Nigeria. Because people come to Nigeria, maybe they're Nigerians, they live in the UK, but then they come to Nigeria for a few weeks and they're always so worried, or maybe they can die from this, maybe somebody can kidnap them, maybe this can happen, maybe that can happen. And I say, yes, it's true. Nigeria now is like 1,000 ways to die, right? I mean, that's that's the country that we live in. You can step out of your house and there are literally 1,000 ways to die. But at the same time, 200 million people live here. So it's 1,000 ways to die, but 200 million people live here. So it sounds like a paradox, or some sort of like very strange catch-22 situation. So when I saw that title, it was immediately evocative to me. People live here. There are people here, people just like you and I. You don't see them, you don't think about them, you don't remember them, but they are here and they ought to be seen, right? They ought to be thought about. They're people just like you. I mean, I'm repeating myself now, but then people just like you and I. So I thought that was very powerful, and it immediately sent a message to me in terms of what to expect in the book. And that's why I said that I felt like there was a lot of the theme of empathy will be coming through very strongly in the book. So my next question to you, I can see a comment from, so Obina says, lovely title, lovelier cover. And then Essay says she assumed you meant actual humans with full range of emotions and ambitions, and not just mad people live here. Because the default assumption is that all of us in Nigeria are not human or less than human, are not human or less than human. Yeah. Yeah. Anyway, so my next question to you, TJ Benson, is about do you have any favorite parts in the book? Do you have any favorite dialogues? Do you have any favorite scenes or scenarios or situations?
So there's this scene that actually dragged me back. So I wanted to abandon. I abandoned the book, but this scene wouldn't let me go, and it's in this makeshift. But I feel like it should be a spoiler. But oh yeah, and by the way, I do love it when you call me TJ Benson because it's a way for me to, Jay is my mom's nickname, Benson is my dad's name, and they are both dead. So when I'm called TJ Benson, it's a way of honoring them. They are still alive in my name. So I do like it when you call me TJ Benson. It's actually preferred, to be honest. Um, for Let me see, what scene can I give that is? I like the ending. When you read the ending, you know why. The end is definitely my favorite part of the book, which is interesting. But yeah, it's my favorite. The fact that I was able to do what I did, yeah, it felt like an achievement to me. I do like the ending. Yeah, for sure, that was my favorite part of the book. Yeah.
So that's a message to everybody here. You have to go and buy it, and then you have to read it all the way to the end because there's a surprise at the end somewhere. Exactly. I can see Habib already saying she can't wait to read it. So that's a very good way to market the book. So there's something in the ending that you're gonna love. So it's the book is at Robin Heights. It's 4,000 naira, so not too expensive. It's quite affordable. I think that's what I saw online. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um.
What's up?
Yeah, 4,000. So you guys can get it. Yeah. So,
Yeah.
now this book, People Live Here. I mean, the other question I was gonna ask you was if the protagonist was your favorite character, or if there was any other character there that and then maybe ask you, because I know you said the thing about death to self and how you try to make the main character as different from you as possible. But do you think you showed up anywhere in the book? So I was
No,
wondering.
yeah, and this is why the book is such a success to me as a writer. There's no aspect of, in fact, the fact that I feel, I wrote the book before I finished writing the Madhouse, and I think finishing writing the book was what gave me the audacity to continue writing the Madhouse, because I was like, if we can do this, then this Madhouse we have been writing since 2008, we can finish it. I I came into a new respect for myself when I finished the book, because nobody in that book, has any, not even the lead character. We don't have anything in common, nothing at all. It's something that makes me very pleased, actually, because I often try to distance myself. But I know with the Madhouse, almost everybody there has a huge aspect of me. Even the sweet pea, the mother of the house, we are very similar in many ways, psychologically. But as I say, we are both Nigerians. I mean, okay, what I have in common with the characters is Abuja English. I found that in process of editing the book, I realized that there's a way English is spoken, Nigerian English is spoken in Abuja, that is very different from Lagos. And my editor noticed it and praised me for it too. Like, you'd say, put inside nylon for me, or give me nylon. But if you go to Lagos and say nylon, they'll be looking at you like, what do you mean? So like there's some words and sentences and phrases. It's not immediately obvious, but when I grew up in Abuja and I spent a lot of my life there. So being able to really sit inside what the Abuja English was and capture that on the page. I definitely did have that in common. But apart from that, I don't have anything in common with her. So it's a success in that regard. It is a success in that regard.
I'm hearing this thing about Abuja English for the first time. I think I'm going to start paying more attention. But this so you had no reference. So for all of your characters, did you have any reference? Were there people in real life? So maybe not you, but maybe your family or your friends, or you pulled everyone in that book out of thin air.
Yeah, and that's why it's part of why they rewrite, because I'll rewrite some characters. I'll rewrite. I had this Mozambican friend who I found on Facebook in 2011, and I wanted to capture her energy, and so I tried to write her into the book, but on the writing, I removed her from the book. So really, it was all conjured up.
I think there are many people here that would like to know how you conjured entire human beings. What does that look like? Do you have a character book where you say this is this person, this is what they like? So maybe you even have some information on the person that is not in the novel, but then do you actually lay out the characters in terms of their features or whatever? What does that conjuring look like in terms?
I started studying Arabic to be able to understand, to be able to speak, because where she was going to in Yemen, they spoke Yemeni, and some of the characters were Yemeni. I wanted to be able to capture them. So, yeah, for sure. I have to have this whole character chart, and then you allow yourself get possessed by these strangers that are coming from somewhere, from your imagination or whatever that you don't know. That's our work as writers. We conjure, we create. So, yeah.
Yeah. So now the publishing process, we have the book out now,
Mm-hmm.
So, at ALS, we like to talk about the creative parts, but also the practical parts, right? So what has been the marketing process like? I know you've been doing talks in different places. What does that look like? Like, so for some people here that are working on books and maybe they're looking to publish sometime soon, can you tell them what they should be expecting?
This will now take us back into a contract workshop. But yeah, always review your contracts to make sure there's the duration for the contract. Last specific, at least, shouldn't be more than 10 years. Always make sure that there is a region, especially if it's a Nigerian publisher or wherever, or avoid giving publishers your world rights. I am just coming back from the US, and I've been in talks with different agents and different editors worldwide, and I could do this because I have my world rights. So if you just watch out for, but also attend festivals, attend events like the ALS Literary Festival, and because these are places where you get to network and meet other artists who will help you understand better what you are doing. Because writing can be an isolating process, but it's also, you are not just writing into this dark room. Your writing is also part of the fabric of other writing that has been done before you and what to come after you. So it's very important to, and also make sure that any publisher that you work with is more excited about your book than you. I've had a pleasant experience so far, because every editor, agent, or whatever I've talked to have always been even more excited about the book and seeing what I've tried to do. The moment, you really don't need a publisher that will just be like, let me just publish this your book. Let them not say I don't publish young Nigerians. Avoid those people. Avoid those people, because you don't want your books to sit on the shelf.
Yeah.
Do not rush to publish. I promise you. If you want to, there are other jobs. If it is, there are other things you can do, but do not rush to publish your book, because once your book is published, it's like frozen in time. So do not publish.
Once and for all. There's something that you said that I think is very important. So this idea about the way the publisher sees your book is, so the publisher must not feel like they're doing you a favor, because even if you think that that plays to your advantage at that time, it's not going to do that eventually, because it determines how much resources they'll put into marketing the book, how they'll choose the book,
how they'll push you, where they'll push the book, the enthusiasm they'll put behind it. Because a book shelf life, once a book lasts, gets published, after 3-4 months, that is it. The publisher moves on to the next thing. So, but if they are excited about your work, it will show in the way they put your, they'll put your work in the forefront, and
Yeah. And I think it's also about believing in yourself, because it's when you really believe in yourself that you know that you're able to decide that this person doesn't have enough value for my work. But if you believe that your work has value, then you can hold on until you meet someone that recognizes that value. And what you said was, find someone that loves your book even more than you do. So someone that can even in some ways play the role of even convincing you some more about the value of what you have in your hands, of what you have with you. I think this is a very important point for all of the aspiring writers. It's not easy and it takes time. This book was written in 2013. We're in 2022. That's almost 10 years, isn't it? Yeah, almost 10 years. Yeah, and it's gone through a journey, like TJ Benson told us, but then that's often what it takes. So I'm asking the audience again, if you have questions, you can let me know what your questions are. Because we haven't spoken to you about the book before this one. So we've spoken to you about the first one, right? I think we won't fade into darkness. That's the first one. Is it okay. Then the second one, the Madhouse, we've never spoken to you about it. What is the Madhouse about? And maybe tell us your most favorite thing about the Madhouse. So writing it, publishing it, marketing it. I know that a lot of people love that book. It's a fantastic book. I've seen a lot of great feedback online on Twitter. So just tell us about the Madhouse.
I really want to request a separate book jam for the Madhouse, because it's the universe it covers is probably larger than people live here. And at the moment, my brain is in people live here. Like my consciousness is sort of like in people live here. But the Madhouse is about an unconventional family that starts in the late 80s. And the spiritual repercussions of the political violence that was happening in Nigeria at the time. I believe that there was a direct correlation between all those coups and strikes and all of that, and the rapid spread of the more violent sects of religions and the height of superstitious beliefs. And I was also interested in how the superstitious beliefs played a role in domestic, family units back then. And it's about intimacy. I started writing it because I had read a lot of Harlequin novels at the age of, by when I was like 16. And I hated the fact that once the couple finally got together, they'll say, and they live happily ever after at the end. And it made me wonder if love was boring to write about. So I wanted to write from where love begins. And I wrote a portion of it for my NECO exams, because they would advise us to do letter writing or expository essay for WAEC and NECO, but I'd already seen my WAEC results, so I felt like I could gamble with NECO. And I was like, oh yeah, let's write a story for these people. And then the story didn't leave me long after I left the exam hall, and that was how I began the adventure.
I agree with you that we need a separate session for that, because even from what you've just said now, you said, people write stories and they talk about happily ever after. And the question is my audio bad? I'm hearing some sort of, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay.
I
So
hear you.
happily ever after, as if love is boring to write about. So like the day-to-day nitty-gritty details of love, maybe people struggle with that. I mean, I agree. We need to unpack we need to unpack all of that.
And those are my favorite parts of the Madhouse, to answer your question. The
Okay.
very domestic, everyday parts of love that people would assume were boring, but in the feedback I got, people were very pleased that I had captured things like just even cooking in the kitchen, slicing onions, or doing to do that and make it interesting. So yeah, I do recommend the Madhouse Tenny. I recommend it for you.
I recommend it for myself too. Let me just find my way out of this out of this headache, back to my first love of reading and everything. But absolutely, I mean, I appreciate your writing. I appreciate the work you do. I love that. I mean, because you said you wrote the story for your NECO, so you wrote it when you were in high school, when you were just about to leave high school, So I am in awe of how formed or how complex your mind was already at that point, right? Because at that stage when almost all of us, or the rest of us that were that age, is it 16, 17, 18, the things that we're thinking about were very different. But then asking yourself these kinds of questions and even seeking to explore them in your writing, even at that stage, I think that is amazing. And maybe to go back to you as a writer, I mean, for the book, for People Live Here, for The Madhouse, for We Won't Fade Into Darkness, all of these books are very available in Abuja, and I'll personally recommend that as many people should go out and look for them and read them. Like I would definitely recommend that. But then going back to you as a writer, are there some things that you might say that have contributed to your success? So you're doing something that a lot of people have tried to do but have not been able to quite crack the code. So are there some things that you say, is it about being persistent, right? Writing a story 6 times until it gets published. And if persistence is or determination is one of those things, where would you say you found it? Or so are there some things that you say may have contributed to TJ Benson today, to who you
I
are?
mean, having if the characters are interesting enough, you sit down with them. Like we here, I was bullied to return to that book. The characters didn't let me. Like I was thinking about them. Oh yes, and titling my books were very difficult, or my short stories were very, very difficult. Like it was so difficult to decide a title until I got to 2017, and boom, I started feeling comfortable with the titles I gave my work. But I don't want to even say discipline, because the truth is that if I was disciplined, I would have produced more work. I have so many.
What happened? I'm seeing a very scary picture. Is it my internet? Can anyone hear me?
We can hear you, Tenny.
Okay.
I
can hear you.
Again.
I don't
Is
know.
that even there?
Was it the power?
Yeah. Oh, it off.
Oh, but TJ Benson,
I'm
that image was very scary because you could just see your white teeth and then everything else was black. Everything else was black. But yeah, I mean, the country.
I'll take that as a compliment. My wife. Um, um, I can't even say determinate. I mean,
We can't hear you now. Are you there? I think the connection is bad.
Hello?
Okay, back. Yeah, you're back.
No, I was saying that my reason for completing each work is often different. Like with people live here, I wanted to move into my own place after university. And so I felt like the plan was once I did the book, I would sell it to a big publisher and get lots of money. And I would just write a book that a big publisher will not be able to resist. And I'll get money and I'll be able to rent my own place. And that didn't happen at the time. But yeah, so I was desperate and hungry, to be honest. So it's not even discipline. I think one common thing across all my writing is the characters. The characters really haunt me in varying degrees. But I always return back to a story I'm working on because of the characters.
But that's a little bit of a chicken and egg situation, because how do you even come up with characters with
Because
characters that make you return
because
to the story?
Because I'm bored. Because I was scared of boredom. I was scared of having to spend any minute of my life where I wasn't hiding in a story. I couldn't bear sitting in the L5 buses from Kubwa to town who say every morning, not thinking with my mind, not thinking about anything, standing in the bus. And I needed I needed to be occupied. I needed my mind to be occupied. Same thing when I was in high school. I couldn't stand, being in high school. So I had to be occupied. So yeah, the characters came from that vacuum that I needed to fill.
I think it's an interesting perspective and approach. So creating characters, imagine so a lot of us do things that are just maybe boring, right? And imagine thinking to yourself that every single time you're doing something that is boring, maybe you're waiting to get your voter's card at INEC, you're going to imagine a new character. And
I'm
then
workshopping
a new character. And what?
Yeah. It's either I'm workshopping a story in such a queue, or I'm listening to me. And it's worse because if I'm listening to music, the music will turn me back to a plot that I abandoned somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
But it's very sweet these days when I have that kind of that moment where I'm in an ATM queue or something. Yeah, escapism. I have this I'm in an ATM queue or something, and then my mind wants to take me back to a story that I'm supposed to be working on, and then I've actually completed writing it. I just smile. Like I have this very huge smile, like, yeah, we've been done that. I'm like, I cancel out character idea. I cancel out plots on my diary. So whenever I'm revisiting my diaries from like 2017, 2016, and I see cancel, it really pleases me because it means I've exhausted those ideas that I laid out.
And I think it's something that I'm going to tell everyone in this meeting. So, I mean, we're all writers, we're all creatives, or we're all some form of creatives or the other. Just imagine taking back some of those times that we feel are wasted during our day. And imagine because thinking about a story is one thing, and sometimes that's a little bit complex, right? A story may not always come to you. But one thing that TJ Benson is saying now is that sometimes you can even think about a character instead, right? So you can actually think about a character, think about another character, be developing the character in your mind, and then you have a group of characters and you now find a way, and they sort of like tell a story together amongst themselves. Sometimes like you just maybe by the time you think about 4 characters, then you can now even imagine, okay, how will these guys interact in a beer parlor? Like what will this person say, what will that person say? And somehow a story can come out of that. And even as I'm saying this, I'm also saying it to myself because I've been telling myself that, wow, and I keep on repeating this in many years now, the idea for a story, like I haven't had an idea for a story. This was never me. Like years before, I'd always have an idea, start a story, abandon it, have another idea. But I can say that in a couple of years, I've never even thought, oh, I want to write a story about this. But it doesn't always have to be that way. There's another way, working from characters. And I think that that's a very interesting perspective. So
Honestly, you would train your mind to be excited about the process. So the fact that you kept on abandoning things you started trained your mind to not continue doing it. Like if you keep on, abandoning your ideas, your mind will be like, well, what's the need? to keep on pretending. But if you keep on chasing after the ideas, like sharpening your mind, the more you reach out for things in your mind, the clearer your vision gets, and the more vivid the things you create become.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So there's a question from Obina. What is your next novel about?
My next novel is about two former sex workers on the run from dangerous politicians in Lagos. And they go on this road trip around Nigeria as Insta celebs and Insta models.
As Insta celebs.
Insta.
Oh, Insta.
Yeah.
So like influencers.
Yeah, influencers, but they're actually former sex workers on the run from some dangerous clients.
Why does that feel like it could have happened somewhere? Like it feels like a true story. It feels like something that could very much happen in today's world, right?
Well, I take that as a compliment.
Yeah.
But be my my last realist book until, and then I'll jump back into speculative fantasy.
Do you have some
Yeah.
Do you have some stories from the speculative fiction side that are calling your name and dragging your attention?
Oh,
Lots.
for sure. I do. I had an outline years ago, for a number of books I wanted to write. But I mean, some of those outlines have dissolved. But yeah, I do have ideas. I feel like it's often a problem because the ideas sort of clash into each other, and I have to really, to do these charts that cover my windows in my apartment. Saying, okay, this belongs to this dialogue belongs to this story, so that I don't get confused.
Yeah, I see that. Okay. Kabura has a question. So what does TJ do to keep honing his skills in writing? So what do you do anything? Is it sort of like,
For sure.
God?
Imagine guys that we were talking about. I make sure I don't have any dull moment or any point. Once I'm by myself or once I'm supposed to be stuck in a moment, I'm just thinking, I'm just practicing, I'm just playing with alternatives. I was teaching a class early today, and I was telling them that, anytime you are bored or anytime you are out of ideas, return your mind back to what is urgent to you. And what is urgent to me now is a hole in my gum because I had a dental surgery 2 days ago. And I was thinking about the fact that, wow, food can actually enter that hole, or anything can be in that hole. I could be kidnapped and used as a drug mule and to hide whatever they're trafficking. You could just keep on your mind. If you keep on training your mind to go in multiple directions or possibilities, stories are possibilities, basically. So if you keep on training your mind to go in different possibilities, it will be easier for ideas to come to you. And I do feel privileged that where I am now, I can understand it this way, because if I didn't start doing this when I was younger, I know that it would have been more difficult to do now because of my own personal capacity, and I also have ADHD. So, but yeah, just keep on training. Don't allow yourself have any dull moments or idle moments. Instead of thinking about the problems in the country, you can think about stories in your head.
Let me ask this question, and it's linked to that one. What is the link between your reading and your writing? So the books that you read.
I mean, for me, it's audacity. When I read writers who have done something similar to what I want to do, it pulls me out of my block, or it pulls me out of the, when I'm scared that, oh my God, I can't do this, or this is too much for me. And then I read Toni Morrison, Ben Okri, Arundhati Roy, I realized that I can do this because these people have done they have faced these beasts that they had to deal with. So reading James Baldwin, reading for me is the audacity really. And a very clear example is Toni Morrison reading the books of Chinua Achebe, Ngugi wa Thiong'o, and them giving her the audacity to write about her own life, because they were writing about the lives of Africans. And they gave her the audacity to write about Black Americans out of the white gaze. And then you now see how it starts, that now even empowered so many other African American. So it's, for me, reading gives me audacity and an idea of what I'm trying to do in my own work.
You have really great insights on some of these things. I think I have actually learned a lot from what you've been saying. And I think this was even the same. This was also the case when we had the earlier session in January or February. And I totally see how come you're teaching writing to people, because it feels like you've reflected on some of these things for quite a while, and from those reflections you've come up with some insights. So what I want to do now, so we just have a few more minutes, I want to sort of like open it up to everyone. So now you have the opportunity to, it doesn't have to be a question, it can be a comment that you want to make about what you've heard so far. So you can even say it verbally. Let's try by just saying that you can unmute your mic if you want to speak, and just maybe reflect on what you've heard. Or okay, let's do it this way. You can raise your hand just so that it doesn't become confusing. So you can raise your hand if you want to say something, but just to reflect on what you've heard. And I'll go first. So for me, I think that there's something that you do, which is always to constantly remind people that wherever you are at, even as a person, as long as you have an interest in writing, or you have a love for writing, you can always find your way back to it one way or the other. And one thing I always hear from you too is that there is no one way of doing something, right? There are many. So as long as you're doing it one way or the other, then it's fine, And the other thing that I'm picking up from you, hearing that this book was written in 2013 and that you had it for quite a while and you kept on trying to push it. Rewriting an entire book 6 times is not a joke, because even finishing one book once is a lot. So really just staying. And another thing that I actually heard is that coming from so if you come up with characters that you love and characters that you care about, then it means that you want to tell the world about them, or you can even put it this way, you want to give them an opportunity to tell the world their story, right? So when we look at writing in that way, where it's about people and people telling stories and ourselves, or people as the writers just being the mediums through which the stories are told, then you even feel more of a mandate to keep at it. So because the only thing standing between that story and it getting told is you, right?
Yeah.
So
yeah, and your stop you, your personal incapacities will be too tiny, or the self-doubt will be too tiny, because these characters or these stories now more important than you and your own body and your experience of failure in your body. So you now, looking at it that way, it's sort of a change.
Yeah, absolutely. So those are my own reflections. So I'm not a dictator, but I'm going to call on people now. Since everyone is shy to raise their hand, I'll start with, I'm sure the person I'm going to start with knows I'm going to start with her. Ese, do you have any reflections on today's session?
Hi.
Hi.
Yes, I enjoyed listening. I know I'm going to re-listen, obviously. I think one.
I'm going to write up. Sure, I was going to start with you.
Yes, I knew actually.
Okay.
One reflection I think I have listened to TJ talk about We Won't Fade into Darkness and also The Madhouse. And I think a difference, there's this pride in how he talks about this one that I think is very commendable, because sometimes with writers you always say, I just they start, so but I think sometimes it's good to say, yeah, I've earned it, I've put in the work, and this is it. So I think that's something I'm saying. I really love when he talked about how he had built his confidence. He started teaching workshop. There's that thing about, no matter how insecure you're feeling, when you feel you can even teach people and they're like, wow, wisdom, teach us more. That tells you like, okay, maybe I actually know my shit. So I think that was something I saw reflected a lot when he talked about, I have not read this one yet, it's on my TBR. So I definitely look forward to that. And I think it's that thing about, even when, I like the fact that he's self-aware. So he's seen his craft, how it's changing, like, see how well I'm writing better, see the kind of characters I'm creating, like nothing about my personality is seeping out. And even if I decide so, you now know it's a choice. It's not a thing of, okay, I'll give you a choice. So yeah, I think that's one of the things I really got in listening to how he's spoken, at least across these 3 books I have now seen him talk about. So I think it's even something that makes me look forward to what my future writing would be like. So I might not be as confident as I am now, but I have to keep at it. And then I know I can start saying, oh yeah, I just came back from the US, and I know when I'm having conversations with them, that kind of thing. So yeah, I think that's the main energy today's conversation has gotten me, that there is a future where you're going to be confident and better, but you just have to keep at it. So yeah, thank you.
Amen.
And well done, TJ.
Thank you.
Thank you, Issy. Habiba, I've been seeing you going your video on and off. Would you like to say something? You're muted though.
So I didn't know it was on at a point. Then I saw that I was on. Then I went off. Then I was on again. So yes. Okay. So I know I said it earlier. Like, this is my first time joining the book reading online, and what do I have to say? I think I find it really interesting that he wrote most of these books like a long time ago, and then now we're getting to read them. So I think somebody asked the similar question. I don't know. Did he predict that he was going to be, obviously maybe not, but I mean, did he have a sense of, okay, I was a completely different person when I wrote it at this age, and then now, like, where people are like reading it, like, is that just some sort of feeling to, it's like, oh, I can't believe I'm letting people into my head. Maybe not exactly, but I mean, people get to read something that I wrote not at this age, but maybe I just did a little bit of like remodeling and reviewing and stuff like that. And then I've always wanted to ask, so about the book cover colors. So for the Madhouse, I saw that it was red and blue. So I just kept wondering, was there a reason that it had to be red and blue? And the same thing as people live here, it's yellow. So I don't know. I just have, I always like to think about the meaning behind colors. So I don't know if they actually think about it while putting together a book cover, or maybe, yellow mostly like, it's mostly like a happy color. So like, did you think of that? Then red and blue, I don't know. Can he say something about that?
TJ, are you there?
Teniola, share happy now. For sure. I really, and that's why I'm very open about my publishing process, because I want people to know that even though, sorry, are you there? Am I still?
Yeah, we can hear you. Yeah.
Hello?
Yeah, we're here.
Okay. Yeah. I want people to know that, like, your publishing path doesn't have to be perfect or linear. There's room for people who, and so yeah. As for, I never think of the future, to be honest, especially when I was younger. I never thought of the future. I never knew that I'll be visiting this manuscript at this stage. So the answer is no. I never knew The Madhouse was a book until I got into ABD residency in 2017, and I had gone to edit Room for Into Darkness, which I also didn't know was a book until the Sarah Manuscript Prize came up, and Sarah Manuscript Prize came up. So I never think of the future, to be honest. I think People Live Here is the first book I sat to write out and, complete intentionally. But I didn't see far into the future. And yes, you are very right about the colors. The colors are very deliberate. With the Madhouse, the red represents a character, the blue represents a character, the yellow text the Madhouse is spelled in represents a different character. So once you read the book, you know why these colors are, and the way the colors come together, it just makes, in fact, like from the very first section, you know why, But as for People Live Here, no, the colors are not indicative of any special thing, just the typography and yeah.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for this question.
I think I'm going to call one more person. I know there's someone that is shaking that doesn't want me to call him. Let me try someone else. Osasu.
Maybe it's Ansem.
Yeah, is that? Let me try Osasu because I think I know this Osasu. Osasu, are you there? And can you talk? I'm not sure. I think it's the Osas that I know, maybe. But Faith. Oh no, Faith, you said you have noise where you are. I think you said something like that in the chats. Okay. Let me go to, okay, yeah. Obina, yeah.
Yeah.
Obina,
All right.
hear from you.
Okay. So I think it was interesting that he talked about how you can train your mind as regards to writing and coming up with ideas, so that with the whole, when you have a boring moment, just keep thinking about your character and keep thinking about a story. Because like I said at the start, I am working on my debut novel, and when I started, I had to train myself to be like that. And now it's something I just do, like without even consciously thinking about it. So I'm be sleeping or just about to go to bed or walking on the street, and then I'm thinking about my characters. I'm thinking about something, and then I'll run and tell my sister or someone, and then she'll be like, "How do you even come up with these things?" So you just have to train your mind. And as regards to you, Tenny, like, you never lose the writing thing, because I used to write when I was young, but I didn't write for a very long time, and I only started last year. And so it's something that you never lose. So I guess I'm also pushing you to go back into it and definitely stay there this time. So that's that.
Thank you, Obina.
Crucial, yeah, I'm giving up. So if another person,
I know, right? I know, right? But TJ Benson, it's been such a pleasure, right? I mean, I know I've said this already today and I've said it before, but then I always learn a lot from you. It's like, how someone can think about something for 5 years and then they now tell you, so you don't have to think for 5 years to figure it out because they've already told you the answer. So that's how this feels. It feels like you've been figuring some things out and you have some answers and you've shared them with us, as far as the writing journey, the writing process, and just the writer's life goes. Thank you for always being open. We look forward to everything that is to come from you. We look forward to always hosting you, to talk about whatever books you're writing. And I was even telling you that if we wanted to try to, maybe next time you're in Abuja, we can try to organize an in-person session at Roving Heights or somewhere like that, so people can come and buy the book and then interact with you directly. Thank you for being here. Thank you for our guests as well. It's always nice. I mean, it's a 2-hour session. It's always nice to see the people that are able to survive till the end of the 2 hours. It's not easy on a Friday night. It just shows that you guys, we're all nerds here, because this is what this is what we're doing on a Friday evening or a Friday night. So then it's been such a pleasure. Thank you for your questions. For TJ, thank you for your comments. Thank you to Ese, that is always a champion whenever I call on her to say something at the book jam. It's great to see everybody that is here: Kabura, Obina, Olade, Osasu, Sanusi, TJ Benson, Anastasia. We didn't hear from you, but it's great to have you here. Faith, Habiba, Kabura, Ese, thank you guys for being here. This is the Abuja Literary Society Book Jam. Like we said before, we meet every last Friday of the month online. So it's the same link actually. So if you have the link once, you can actually go back to the same link and get in. So next month we may be having, or we're working towards having, a joint virtual open mic between Nigeria and Cameroon. So if you want to hear some French poetry or some French spoken word, you should plan to attend that session. Yeah, so it's 9:03. Thank you to everyone. Thank you, TJ Benson. I hope we have a fantastic weekend, Friday nights. The Friday is still very young, so fantastic Friday nights ahead, fantastic weekends ahead. And for those people that haven't gone to get their PVC, I think next week is the last week now. I think, I'm not sure. So we have to go and do the hustle and get this thing. All right now. So have a nice evening, everyone. Good night.
Good night. Thank you so much for having me.
Good night.
Thank you.
Good night. I just wanted to
It's been
say
a-
hello.
been a good meeting.
Hi,
I was here with Swedi and he was looking in there, and I guess you
Hi,
guys were very
everyone.
busy talking then.
Oh, that's
He wanted
sweet.
to say hi. Yeah.
Good
So,
night, everyone.
like I'm in
Bye.
Makurdi currently. So
Oh, when the festival is coming up there now, Abi.
it's going on actually.
Oh, at the moment. Okay, okay.
Yeah.
That's nice. That's nice.
TJ, you wanted to set me up, you know what? Tenny did not fall for it. Well done, Tenny.
No, it was my plan. I wanted to call you, but I was like, let me leave.
Wow. It's
Let me leave Sanity today. Yeah.
okay.
Good night, everyone.